Hi there everyone, welcome to our YouTube channel. Today we're going to talk about the define phase in DMAIC. Every business, every organization and every job has challenges. From entry level to senior executive, all of us face challenges that can't be answered by a quick Google search. The inability to skillfully solve problems is a major source of workplace frustration. This is especially true for roles that deal with complex challenges, tight deadlines and rapid changes. And yet very few individuals and organizations are very good at it. These short videos provide targeted, bite-sized instructions. Here we cover the define phase, the first of 5 problem-solving phases. In this video you will learn how to build the foundation of your improvement project, to create a clear understanding of the process, the customer and the problem, and you will learn key change management skills to engage your team right from the beginning. Check it out to see the keys to setting your improvement up for success. Good luck! Way before the start of an improvement project, many steps were taken and decisions made. Most organizations and most functions within organizations are constantly working on multiple efforts to make things better. These efforts may be formal or informal, but to do it right, it must be managed well to ensure that our efforts are not a big waste of time and resources.
Selecting improvement projects means that we identify areas to improve, strategically plan the resources and the timing, and ensure that we have strong leadership support throughout the project lifecycle. One of the biggest decisions that any organization will have to make is selecting projects that they'll undertake.
As a green belt, you will be responsible for leading or participating in an improvement project. However, you may or may not be involved in the selection of this project. Whether you are part of project selection or not, it's important that you have a good understanding of how projects are selected.
Not all organizations have a formal structure in place to select projects. As a matter of fact, most don't. But whether it's formal or not, decisions are being made and resources are being consumed. A typical management meeting may go around the room and ask for updates on different efforts going on. There's usually an overwhelming amount of details to cover. Additional challenges or changes pop up, and the leadership team can feel drained and spread very thin after these discussions.
Without a solid method in place, a progress or update meeting can quickly become overrun with competing priorities with a pull on the same resources, with new problems surfacing faster than solutions. Or you may end up resorting to the familiar method of the loudest participant winning. It is also typical for the decisions that were made in the past to be forgotten or overshadowed by the urgent issues of the moment and of that day. And in the end, the results or the ROI from your efforts can be disappointingly small.
A lot of research has been done on why projects fail, and we've identified here what we believe to be the top 3 reasons for project failure. Reason number 1 is lack of leadership support. Leaders will almost always say that they support a project, and they do mean it, but without a good structure in place, they don't end up actively supporting a project. And when that happens, projects get stalled. They run way too long, or they fizzle out and they have little to no return.
The second reason is a failure to properly manage the project portfolio. This means that we don't have a grip on what projects are going on, what's planned, and we don't know if we are on track to get the results that we need.
Reason number 3 is that as new business improvement methods and tools are introduced, there's not time set aside for the participants to really learn and apply the new concepts. They usually rush through the project work, squeezing it into the tiny margins of their day, and it really shows in the meager results.
Key elements that the decision makers will focus on, including the setting of the organizational budget, strategy, and goals. During this time, there are many thoughts and ideas about potential areas that the organization should focus on improving. These meetings can be quite overwhelming, because the leaders are coming together and they're faced with the immediate problems and pressures of today, as well as the demands for the future.
The next element is the gap or the opportunity analysis. During this step, functional leaders will assess the gap between how we're currently performing and where we should be, or the desired performance. At this time, the big list of ideas should get a bit more structured with actual numbers, and also tends to get a bit smaller as potential doable projects get identified.
During the process of project selection, if it's done well, additional work is done to prioritize the projects and the list becomes more manageable. This is usually a hard task because some things gotta give. We know that too well. We always think that we can do more than what we really can. So hard decisions have to be made, and not everything can be tackled at the same time.
When leadership, specifically the sponsors, begin to add details to the project plan, they will evaluate resources and timing. So who will work these projects, and when will they start? When will they end? In reality, without a good structure in place, this is typically done poorly. Many times, teams are notified that they're on a project, if it's even called that, in an email, and they show up to a meeting not knowing why they're there. If the leaders do a good job of planning, that is, selecting the teams and planning the schedule, they can conduct a great project kickoff so that everyone has all the info they need to hit the ground running.
When projects are kicked off, they are not all running at once. They are usually staggered throughout the year and in various parts of the organization. In addition to the projects that are active, there are also daily demands and priorities that are always shifting. There are projects scheduled to kick off in the future, and this is a lot to manage. Managing the project portfolio is the role of the leaders or sponsors, and having a strong method is key to ensuring that the value of the projects stay on track.
To formalize the necessary milestones, leaders start by establishing a cycle, the leadership cycle, to support and manage the critical decisions and plan for the monitoring that must occur. When we establish a management or leadership cycle, we can plot the major milestones throughout the year. First, we look at the large picture of quarters. Whether your organization works on the calendar or the fiscal year, establishing quarters is a solid place to start the plan.
After the strategic plan is set, moving clockwise around the map, leadership can establish goals. These are specific and measurable desired outcomes that get us to the strategic objective. With goals in place, leaders can collaborate, identify gaps and opportunities for improvement. There are usually many ideas and options for improvement, so the next milestone is to select the projects that will be executed in the next year. Projects can then be initiated. The projects don't all launch at the same time, please. It will depend on urgency, team availability, other efforts going on at the same time, and many other factors.
With the cycle in place, the different levels of the organization, for example, corporate level, regional, site, department, will have a clear plan for when these major decisions must be made. And with that solid foundation, each level of the organization can participate as needed.
In your workbook, you will see a diagram of the leadership cycle. Think about your own scenario. Do these different steps occur, formally or informally? When do they occur? And use the circles to indicate where the steps should fit into the cycle.
Throughout this training, you'll be learning many continuous improvement tools and techniques. For most Lean Six Sigma practitioners, after learning the theory in your training, it takes years of trial and error, research, copy and pasting to remember how and when to use a tool or a concept, and then figuring out how to create it yourself, whether on a flip chart, in Word, PowerPoint, Excel, or whatever. As a part of your Greenbelt training, you have received a full toolkit, which includes a one-page easy reference called our one-point lesson, as well as a full set of ready-to-go templates. After each method or tool that is taught, we'll wrap the section with a one-point lesson.
In your workbook, you will see the one-point lesson for the leadership cycle. Establishing a leadership cycle that works like a well-oiled machine takes some time and effort and commitment. It's not going to be perfect right away. The key is to start where you are, use what you have, and do what you can. Let's take a little deeper dive into where you come in, the project kickoff.
In reality, we almost always think that we can accomplish more than we really can. And the greatest limiting factor is resources. The first steps in preparing to initiate a project is to confront those limitations. When we do this accurately and do the work it takes to properly sequence these projects, of course they don't all launch at the same time, we will realize that we will likely need to reduce the number or the scope of the projects that were selected.
Having a realistic understanding of our resource availability is one of the most challenging aspects of managing the project portfolio. The responsibility of the plan for project kickoff, which is effectively the final step in project selection, belongs to the project sponsors. They will coordinate the timeline of the projects, the meetings where the project is officially kicked off, and they will develop the plan for ongoing tracking and supporting of the projects.
Preparing for the projects to kick off includes an assessment of the project approach, the team members and the roles that they will play on the team, the timeline, and the type of sponsor support that will be required. Let's talk through the different project approaches first.
One of the great things about Lean Six Sigma that I love is its robustness and ability to flex to all different types of situations and industries. Understanding the types of initiatives will allow us to apply the right techniques as well as better risk management. Here we will cover the major types of projects.
The first is the quick win. Sometimes this is called a JDI project for just do it. This type of project indicates that there's no mystery root cause to be analyzed and the solution is obvious. The only thing that needs to be done is that we need an action plan for the solution to be implemented. For example, if a printer is broken and we need to order a new printer, that would not be considered a team project. It would be a JDI, just do it. This type of an effort should not be included in the project portfolio. Rather, it's an action item that should have an owner and a due date.
If we have an issue where we know the cause, but there might be many different ways to solve the issue, a rapid improvement event, also known as a Kaizen event, might be appropriate. This requires that a team is formed. A lot of preparation is done to ensure that we have all the facts and data collected, and then the team gets together for a 2 to 5 day workshop to collaborate and implement an innovative solution.
An RIE can be greatly effective, but to be honest, it's not typically done well in most organizations. As with all methods, it takes skill and experience to do this well. But when done right, the results can be amazing. One of the most important aspects of an RIE is knowing when it's the right approach. RIEs should be included in the project portfolio, as it takes resources to prepare for the event, participate in the event, and then take on the follow-up actions. And the key to being able to do those steps well is support from the sponsor.
A root cause analysis project is probably the most typical type of Lean Six Sigma project. This is a situation where there is a problem with an existing process and the cause of the problem is not known. There might be many theories or ideas, but typically the problem has been around for a while and it's been tackled unsuccessfully and frustratingly multiple times. A typical root cause analysis project will require a team to work the project, and it will typically take 3 to 4 months to complete, depending on the size of the project. For projects that are estimated to take longer, it's recommended that they are broken down into 3 to 4 month iterations or a multiple generational plan, so that the success can be achieved in increments rather than taking on a year-long project.
Process design means that we're designing a process that does not yet exist. For example, a whole new product or a whole new service. Process redesign means that we have a process that does exist, but it's so broken or outdated that it makes more sense to start from scratch with a redesign. With a design or a redesign, we're not focused on finding the root causes of problems in the process, because the process doesn't exist. So the tools and methods that we use to discover root causes of problems are not really very relevant. A redesign effort typically is a larger undertaking than a process improvement project. The general rule of thumb is 4 to 6 months, but there are usually multiple phases or generations of the redesign depending on the scope.
When we are looking for gaps or opportunities to improve a process, one of the first things we do is to compare current results to our targets. But what if we've never established targets? What if we don't actually monitor meaningful performance data? Lots of processes don't have meaningful or accessible metrics. In this case, we would start with a visual process management project. Before we launch any improvements, we first identify meaningful measures for the process, and then we make them visible and gather the team around them on a daily basis to begin the process of daily problem solving. This is a foundational and very important discipline that allows a team to gain the strength and skill to tackle bigger opportunities that will arise. There are many different tools and methods that are related to these different project types, but the most common and the most foundational is DMAIC.
Quick wins, rapid improvement events, and root cause analysis projects all follow the basic flow and milestones of DMAIC. The execution is a bit different depending on the scenario, but the basic concept and flow remains the same. To determine the best method for your project, you can use the quick 2x2 table here that bases the project type on whether the cause and solution are known or unknown. If the cause is known, for example, documents are not printing, the printer is broken, and the solution is known, for example, install a new printer. That's a just do it project. If the cause is known, for example, recipes are not being mixed properly because everyone does it their own way, but the solution is unknown, there's likely a lot of options for how we might fix it. That would meet the basic criteria for a rapid improvement event. If neither the cause nor the solution is known, for example, we're not getting as much juice out of the oranges as we used to, that would fall into the category of root cause analysis project. And the last one, more common than you might think, is when we think we know the solution without knowing the cause, and that's just a bad idea.
Design or redesign projects follow a little bit of a different path because instead of improving an existing process, we are actually designing a new one. The method used for design projects is pronounced duh-may-ick. The acronym DMAICK stands for Define, Measure, Analyze, Design, and Verify. So instead of improve, it's design. Instead of control, it's verify, to ensure that the new design actually accomplishes all the objectives. For a visual management project, you'll notice that there is no improve phase, and it's pronounced DMAIC. Creating visual management sets up the process to facilitate daily improvements as a part of the routine procedures. The team defines the process and customer, identifies critical measures, analyzes causes so that we can monitor as needed, and then puts controls in place to keep the visual management productive and efficient.
For your Greenbelt certification, it's recommended that you apply what you are learning to an actual improvement project. The type of project that you select depends greatly on the type of leadership support that you have, as well as your own learning and improvement objectives. If you're a part of a larger organization with multiple functions participating in improvement, you may be focused on improving a larger segment of the overall business. Using a simple manufacturing example, your project might be focused on improving from the time the raw materials are received to the time the finished goods are shipped. This requires participation and leadership support from all the functions or processes involved.
Perhaps we have participation and support from just a couple of departments or functions. Our scope might be smaller, for example, focused on the time the materials are unloaded to the time they are put on the conveyor belt.
You might be a part of a team from a single department with functional leadership or manager support only. For example, the project might be to increase the volume processed or decrease the errors for the department. In this case, it will be very difficult to improve upstream or downstream handoffs. If you're a team of one, an individual contributor, you may not have any specific leadership support. Maybe leadership is unaware, not interested, or non-supportive. In this case, your project can focus on improving your own productivity, the quality of your own work or handoffs, or on minimizing your own frustrations and waste.
And lastly, you have the option of working on a personal project. You will derive support from stakeholders such as family and friends, your own circle. You might decide to use your Greenbelt skills to improve your household, the community, or just your own health and well-being.
For example, you might decide to decrease household waste, things like food waste, household costs, improve recycling. You might focus on improving your health. For example, reduce your weight, improve your blood pressure, get off prescription meds. Or you could decide to improve efficiency or results of homeschooling. We want to make sure that the project is focused on significant benefits. However, significant benefit is a relative factor, and it depends on your own situation and your own scope.
The point is that when focused on improvement, we can find opportunities at any level. Learning the tools and skills of a green belt is best for the project, but it is not required. As you learned in yellow belt training, there are different types of projects. A typical green belt project follows the DMAIC method and is focused on root cause analysis. That means that the cause and solution are unknown.
A good green belt project should meet the following criteria. There should be an observable problem or gap in an existing process. The root cause of the problem is unknown or uncertain. The benefits are significant. And data to understand the current situation and the root cause is either available or it can be gathered.
Disqualifiers for a green belt project include when urgent action is needed and there is no time for analysis, when the root cause is obvious and the solution predetermined. For example, a piece of equipment or software is obsolete and there is a replacement already selected. And the last disqualifier is if there are low potential benefits. A root cause analysis project takes some time and resources to do it well. So we have to watch out for our project ROI, or return on investment, and make sure that the project is worth doing in the first place.
Before we move ahead to team selection in the project kickoff section, it's a good idea to clarify a few significant project roles. Specifically, the project sponsor, the project leader, the team member, and the process owner. In some cases, this could all be the same person, but in larger organizations, these are 4 different roles and usually 4 different people, and it's important to understand the differences between them.
The project sponsor is usually a leader in an organization and has decision-making authority. They are formally the owner of the project. They participate in a selection of projects and is the main advocate of the project, providing guidance and removing roadblocks for the team.
The project leader is typically a green belt who will lead the team to successful completion. The project leader organizes the regular team meetings and helps to establish roles within the team. The leader has the ability to apply continuous improvement tools and concepts and leads the hands-on work of the team. It's the responsibility of the project leader or the green belt to hand off the new and improved process to the process owner.
The process owner is the functional owner or manager. They don't have a belt, but they are an important member of any improvement team. They are the ones who are accountable for the specific process or department in the organization. The process owner helps the project team to identify current measures and to understand how the process works. The process owner is responsible for maintaining the improvement and for ensuring ongoing monitoring of the process. They may or may not be experienced in Lean Six Sigma, but preferably have at least a white or a yellow belt.
The team member is someone with relevant experience, knowledge, or skills necessary to successfully complete the project. The team member should have a minimum of a yellow belt to participate in a team. The team member attends all project meetings and takes tests. They complete action items throughout the project.
The black belt is a specialized role. That means that the person is certified as Lean Six Sigma expert. A black belt is typically a full-time role that is focused on leading or supporting multiple, simultaneous improvement projects. Depending on the specific scenario, a black belt may serve in any of these roles.
Let's talk about teams. A team is a small number of people, usually 5 to 7, with complementary skills who are working toward a common purpose and a common goal. Without a common goal, it's just a group of people. A team will use a common approach for which they hold themselves mutually accountable.
Process improvement teams must have the skills and knowledge to meet project needs, an understanding of the process being improved. They must have diverse skills, for example, technical, analytical, and interpersonal skills. And there should be representation from critical support functions. This would be functions such as systems, finance, HR, maintenance, for example.
Take a few moments now to review the descriptions in the table in your workbook. At the top of each of the columns, identify whether the column is describing the responsibilities of the sponsor, the project leader, the team member, or the process owner.
Some teams have great success, and others ride the struggle bus from the start to the end of the project, hey Claire?
Yep.
The greatest team success factors are working together to achieve a common goal, strong communication, leveraging individual expertise, diversity in skills, knowledge, and experience is valued, strong team leadership, availability of appropriate resources, the ability to manage conflict, very important, and the leadership alignment and support from the start.
In your workbook is a simple assessment. Think about a team that you participated in or have led, and think about how that team functioned once they were established. So not at the very beginning when the team is just formed, but once the team got on a roll. And rate the team on the success factors. When you're done with the assessment, reflect on the purpose or the goal of that team. How successful was the team at reaching the goal? Was it a painful slog, or was it exhilarating and rewarding? Take a few moments now and pause the video for this workbook activity.
To support project sponsors and decision makers in selecting a team, we have created a simple template to ensure balance of necessary skills. On the top of the team selection form, you will see the business case. This is created by the project sponsor.
As team members are considered for the project, their specific skills are assessed by the decision makers. The different skills and expertise are listed in the lower right as a guide. If a team member had successfully demonstrated that he or she has that particular skill, a check mark is placed in the corresponding boxes to indicate their expected contributions to the team.
The important things to check are that we have a good balance of skills on the team. Not too much or not too little in a specific area. This checklist can be used by the sponsor to ensure that the team is balanced and set up for success from the start.
This brings us to our project kickoff template. This is the form that holds the information used to hand off the project from sponsor to the team. It's designed to provide the team with all the available information about the project so that they have a strong and organized start. Essentially, the template covers the 5 W's: who, what, when, where, and why.
The sponsor is responsible for pulling the new team together for the official kickoff. And the more information that is provided, the stronger the kickoff and the greater the chances of success. Any missing information should become an action item to be quickly addressed so that the team can move forward. As far as project moments go, The kickoff is a pretty big one. We can't overstate the importance of a project kickoff meeting. How the rest of your project unfolds will often depend on the clarity, the tone, and the expectations that are set here. If the kickoff meeting is done right, the rest of the road will be a lot smoother.
Project selection and kickoff is the responsibility of the project sponsor. And to help guide and organize their efforts, along with their Blue Belt certification, Blue Belts will receive templates for project selection, team selection, and for the project kickoff. As a Green Belt, this will allow you to be tightly aligned with your sponsor and to have a great start to your improvement project.
The sponsors also have their own set of one-point lessons, which include the leadership cycle, filter matrix, criteria matrix, team selection, and project kickoff.
As you begin to take action toward the fulfillment of your goals and aspirations, you need to realize that not every action will be perfect. Not every action will produce the desired result, and not every action will work. Making mistakes, getting it almost right, and experimenting to see what happens are all part of the process of eventually getting it right.
As a Lean Six Sigma Green Belt, you may need support when faced with challenging or unique scenarios, or when applying tools or methods that are not often used. If you should need support, you can contact us to schedule a private coaching session through our website. Just look for the Coaching with Cannsult link. We are your partners in continuous improvement and are a resource to help you quickly and effectively reach your goals.
Welcome to the first phase of DMAIC, Define. This is the first major milestone of a root cause analysis project and the first step to becoming a certified Lean Six Sigma Green Belt. This phase is all about the team getting their heads wrapped around this project. This is the preparation phase, where the team aligns on all the foundational aspects so that delays, rework, and mistakes can be avoided. This phase might seem like the easiest, but it's the most important because it sets the project up for success. A weak define phase will mean that the team will struggle and find themselves wandering in all directions throughout the entire project.
The Refine phase includes 8 modules. The first is a short intro module to learn a bit about the Define phase. In the second module, we will teach you about a very important Green Belt tool, and that is the SIPOC. Module 3 is about customer and business requirements. In Module 4, we will cover all the details of the project charter, and in Module 5, we will provide information and tools to manage stakeholders throughout your projects. In the final 3 modules, we will cover the project storyboard, Tollgate meetings, and the milestone checklist for the Define phase.
The Define phase is the first phase of a DMAIC root cause analysis project. In this phase, the team will make sure that they have a solid project foundation so that they can effectively and efficiently get to improvement results. In the Define phase, the team will get all the details of the project in order so they can minimize delays, mistakes, and rework.
Define is the key to maximizing your project return on investment, or ROI. Always remember, especially as you are still learning how to be a Green Belt and a great Green Belt, over-preparation will help you be ready for anything and give you the knowledge and confidence that you can handle whatever comes your way. Preparation and persistence is a great substitute for experience and skill.
So before we can start analyzing or improving anything, the team has to do some work to clarify the foundational aspects of the project. Specifically, the Define phase is a time to clarify the process, the customer, and the problem. A problem can be defined as any requirement or need of the customer that's not being met. It can also be a requirement or need of the business that's not being met. To understand the problem, the team asks, what's currently causing dissatisfaction with our customer? What's unacceptable with the current situation? If we're focusing internally, we may have very satisfied customers, but we're not efficient. Our costs might be out of control.
We will kick off the Define phase by understanding the process. This is the time for the team to understand which process or processes the improvement project will focus on, where it starts, where it ends, and all the stuff in between. We're not getting into the details in this early phase. Rather, we are taking a 30,000-foot view to help us frame our project.
Understanding the process is not about a right or wrong answer. It's about the team creating a shared understanding of the process and the customer. This is not always as easy as it might seem. For many problems that have been defined, there are not clear boundaries. There may not be clear outputs and handoffs. On the next page in your workbook, you have a blank space for you to illustrate, using no words, the steps to making toast. This will seem trivial, but this exercise reveals the reality about how we collaborate to solve problems. Pause this video for a few minutes and draw your diagram.
Anyway, so that's why my dad wears gym shoes in the pool. Oh, welcome back.
Welcome back.
I'm sure that some of your drawings are quite good. Others maybe not so good, because let's just say that the details of the process might be a little, a little bit vague. And to the artist who supplied the drawing of toast right up here, you thought you were being clever by making an oversimplistic drawing. But it isn't useless. It can still be used as a not so good example.
Good point. Some of your maps might be all about the toast. It's like the toast journey or the toast experience.
Toast.
My favorite is the cartoon guy with the jelly on his face over there.
And maybe some of you drew your maps from the perspective of the toaster. If you're mechanically inclined, you might have drawn the mechanics of the actual toaster.
Some drawings are all about the people and visualizing the experience that people have. And others might be about the supply chain that goes all the way back to the store. What's so interesting, though, is that even though the drawings are hugely different, they all have something in common. Most have tasks and flow. That's the links between the tasks. And our graphics make it clear how we think something works. They also reveal our different points of view.
In a way, we can get a feel for how complex a process is by counting the number of tasks. When we create a process map, we are breaking something that can be very complex into simple parts, and then we bring all the pieces back together again.
And this brings us to the topic of high-level process maps. Just like with your toast diagram, a high-level process map is a graphical display that shows the flow and the steps in a process. Through your Greenbelt training, you'll learn many different types of maps. Each has its own purpose, its own benefits, and something about each map that makes it unique. Additionally, maps can show different perspectives. A map can be a current state, which we use to understand how things work today, or a future state, which we'll use when we get to the improve phase to illustrate how things will work in our improved process. At this point, at the very beginning of the define phase, the team will use a current state, high-level map to understand the process, the customers, and to develop clarity around this project.
And the team will use a map called the SIPOC. This is a small but mighty tool and should be used for every project. If I was stranded on a desert island and could only bring one CI tool, it would be the SIPOC, Claire.
Oh, same for me. If my hair was on fire, I'd still use a SIPOC.
We might have to do it very quickly then. What's different about a SIPOC from other process maps is that it's high level. It includes the supplier and inputs, as well as the outputs and customers. And very importantly, it includes requirements.
Let's start nice and simple with the paper airplane process example. We'll talk through this in the same order that the team will create the SIPOC. And this is in the order of output, customer, input, supplier, and then the process, or OCISP. We are a team that's been pulled together to improve the production of our paper airplanes. And the team agrees that the output of the process is a finished paper airplane. The airplane goes to the customer who ordered it. The process starts when we receive our plain paper. That's our input. And it comes from the paper factory. That's the supplier of the input.
Lastly, the team agrees on the high-level steps that it takes to turn that plain piece of paper into a completed airplane. And they illustrate it here in the P column. When you create a SIPOC in real life, the challenge can be to keep the team from diving into too much detail too early on. At that stage of the project, we want to stay high level. Just remember the SIPOC mantra. Stay as high as you can, as long as you can. One of the first places we taught this concept was in Amsterdam a long time ago. We said, stay as high as you can, as long as you can. What did they say, Claire?
We intend to. Anyway, now let's do a little more realistic business process with our call center issue resolution example. The team agrees that this process ends when a call is resolved. So our output is a resolved issue. And that resolved issue is presented or delivered to the customer who called with a problem. Next, we move to the input, and the team agrees that the process starts when a call is received, and the supplier of that call is the caller, the customer. In most transactional or service processes, the supplier and the customer are the same person.
Now the team moves to the process steps. The rule of thumb is to keep the process steps at a high level with no more than 5 to 7 steps max. The team has some discussion and decides that the 4 major steps are: understand the question, discuss the details with the caller, research the issue, and then explain the resolution.
Now, someone in the team says, hey, but we don't explain the resolution to the caller. We send an email to the account manager and they call the customer. So the team revises their SIPOC to show the output is an email and it goes to the account management team. This is where it's important to understand that the customer of the process is not always the end customer or external customer, the one paying for the services. Internal customers are downstream processes or other parts of the business that receive our output. In our SIPOC, the C indicates the recipient of our output.
Let's add a little bit more complexity with our cup of coffee example, where we have multiple inputs and multiple outputs. The team identifies that the process ends when we have delivered a cup of coffee and an invoice to the customer who ordered the drink. The process starts when we have received an order, in person or using our app, from the coffee drinker. And in our project to improve this process, we will also include a different kind of input, the ingredients. An input to the process is the coffee beans and the artisan spring water that comes from the coffee bean producer. The high-level steps in the process are to add the water to the machine, add the beans to the grinding compartment, press on, and add condiments, and then prepare the invoice.
A few members of the team are having a side discussion, and the project leader asks them to share with the rest of the team. They point out that the people making the coffee and creating the invoice are part of the hotel kitchen staff, and they don't deliver the coffee to the hotel guest, the end customer. They give it to room service, who has their own process to deliver it to the customer. This is a really important distinction as the needs of each customer may differ, and understanding what our customers need, their requirements of our process, is absolutely key for us to understand how to continue to improve.
When we are dealing with a large or complex process, many times it will require multiple SIPOCs to understand how it all connects. In fact, SIPOCs can be linked together so that the output and customer of one process is the supplier and input for the next, and so on. So while we've just walked through a few graphical examples of how the SIPOC is constructed, in reality, the first step to creating one is for the team to get together and sketch it out. The team collaborates and creates the model themselves. This is done in a structured brainstorming session and requires a lot of discussion and changes as the team shares and creates their understanding of the process.
A whiteboard or flip chart is used so that the team has a central focal point and can all participate. The team may invite other subject matter experts to ensure the accuracy of the SIPOC. Each SIPOC element will be captured on a sticky note or with a dry erase marker so that changes can easily be made. As the team builds up their model, they express, reflect, and analyze to get clarity on the process. This activity produces a very rich experience for the team.
So in reality, the SIPOC starts off very messy, gets messier, and then clearer and clearer. The result is a unified model that integrates the diverse points of view of all participants. So the team builds the map together and aligns around the process that they will be improving. Except, of course, they use words, not icons. A little pro tip for the process column on your stickies: use the basic structure of verb plus noun. For example, move boxes, complete form, submit request, sort data, etc. This eliminates a lot of confusion and unnecessary wording.
Once the team has collaboratively mapped out the process in SIPOC form, the next step is to document the raw, messy SIPOC using our template or your own.
You will see cells to capture the process name and process owner, as well as cells to capture the other elements of the SIPOC. In addition, you will notice the light blue, light green, and yellow cells, which are there to capture requirements. Before we complete the SIPOC, we'll first need to learn about these requirements. Customer input and business requirements will be covered in the next chapter, along with our SIPOC 1-point lesson.
Understanding requirements is the basis for understanding where we need to improve. What are the standards that need to be met for our customers, our people, and our business to thrive?
We will focus on requirements in every phase of DMAIC. In the define phase, we will understand our opportunities to improve based on what the customer and business needs or wants. In measure, we turn those requirements into something tangible and measurable. In the analyze phase, we focus on specific aspects of our process that are causing problems with us delivering requirements. The improve phase focuses on designing our processes to deliver to requirements. We test our products and processes to ensure that every requirement is met. And in the control phase, the requirements become our KPIs, our key performance indicators, that we monitor regularly.
There are different types of requirements. A process improvement project will typically focus on a specific problem or opportunity with the output or business requirements. The input requirements adjust the standards and expectations of the input. Whether the input is a request, an order, raw ingredients, or parts, these inputs have to meet certain standards for the process to run well. This is all about the garbage in, garbage out concept. What does the process need to deliver a good output?
Output requirements are all focused on the needs and the wants of the process customer. Whether it's an internal customer or external who is receiving your process output, they are the only ones who can truly define what standards need to be met. What does the customer need? What does the customer consider a great job? And we have to work to meet the customer or output requirements with consideration for the business. The business has certain goals and standards that it must meet in order to stay viable, profitable, growing, and with happy employees. What does the business need in order to stay profitable, to grow, and to scale?
Let's revisit our cup of coffee SIPOC and take a look at adding these 3 categories of requirements to our map. First, we'll look at the output requirements. Our customer doesn't want just any old cup of coffee. She has expectations for how quickly it's delivered, for the quality of the coffee, and for the value or the cost. And she'll expect the bill to be prepared quickly and accurately. And the business has to meet these requirements while meeting their own. The business requirements are that the company is profitable, that their staff is competent, happy, and safe, and that they run efficiently.
In order to do this, the process needs to start with good inputs. The order information must be clear and accurate, and our beans and water must be delivered on time at a good quality and a good value. These are very high-level descriptions of our requirements, and many times the team will start out at this high level of understanding, and then we work to get into more specific descriptions of what standards actually need to be met. In a DMAIC project, we are focused on improving an outcome, improving an output requirement. And whether we are focused on an internal customer or an external customer, or on an internal business requirement, a core concept of Six Sigma is to keep the customer in focus.
Our process customer is the most important perspective to understand. We're not doing the customer a favor by serving him or her, which is actually a common attitude, especially with internal customers. We need to understand that our customer is doing us a favor by giving us the opportunity to do our work. Customers, whether they're internal or external, are the only ones who can define what a good job looks like. For this reason, your customers actually know more about your process and what it needs to deliver than you do. You can't define it apart from your customers. What's a defect? What's considered on time? What does easy to use mean? These are all aspects of your process that we must understand from our customer so that we can prioritize our opportunities for improvement.
In your workbooks is a table that walks you through some questions to get you thinking about customers and their requirements. In the table on the left column, there are different jobs and roles. Consider these roles and think through the questions. For example, in the first row, you are a third grade teacher. Who would be the end customer? This would likely be the third grade student. What would the customer's needs be? Who might be an internal customer? Maybe the office staff who collect your reports? What might the organization need? Take a few moments now to think through these questions to help get your mind thinking about requirements from different perspectives.
The whole point in understanding requirements is so that we understand where we have problems or opportunities to improve. A problem or opportunity is a gap between a requirement, or what the customer expects, and actual results. We don't always get the opportunity to see the look of confusion or disappointment when our customer is using our product or service. A problem is a customer need or a standard that's not being met. At this point, during the define phase of a project, the team may not have a specific problem in mind, or they may have a specific problem, but the actual current measure of how big or bad the problem is may still be unknown.
For example, they might know that operational costs are high or customer satisfaction is low. That's pretty general. Or more specifically, that internal customer complaints of too many delays with deliveries. This is a specific problem, but there is no measure of the current performance, which would show the gap. And another example could be service level agreement with Butterfield supply states that all emails should be responded to within an average of 24 hours. Last quarter, the average was 30 hours. This is a specific problem with a measure of the current performance or description of the gap.
You may start your project with a direction from the sponsor to solve a specific problem. For example, all emails should be responded to within 24 hours. Last quarter average was 30 hours. In this case, the team would verify the customer requirement, and then in the measure phase, they'll determine how big the gap is between the current performance and that requirement. Or you might be given a general direction and you'll need to discover the opportunity. In this case, the team will explore all requirements and identify the greatest opportunity that's manageable.
As we are beginning to discuss, understanding requirements will provide a solid foundation for the team. And they're not always easy to get to. Requirements are very specific and measurable. This is how we can design our processes to meet them and how we monitor and maintain the process. But the challenge is that customers tend to be very vague. They don't provide you with a nice, precise list of their requirements. You have to research, listen, and look downstream to understand.
When we understand the requirements, they must be stated clearly and simply. Here are a few guidelines. State one requirement at a time. Express in the positive. So we state what we'll do, not what we won't do. For example, instead of saying no reports to be sent by fax, the requirement might be all reports to be sent via email. Be specific and unambiguous. The requirement must be observable and measurable. So instead of saying respond quickly, we might say respond by noon the following day. And we state the standard to be met, not how we'll meet that standard.
Typically, we start with a general understanding of requirement. For example, our customers want it fast, and it takes some work to understand specifically that fast to our customer means less than 24 hours from request to delivery.
Or maybe the general requirement of easy actually means that they expect to get to the order screen in no more than 3 clicks.
An accurate order might mean that the product color and size delivered is exactly what was ordered. Well, not might, it does. A broad term like defect-free requires that you understand what the customer recognizes as a defect. From the perspective of the customer, customers don't tell you their requirements. They give you generalities mostly, and you have to listen and explore to really understand the specifics.
In your workbooks are some examples of general requirements. Pause the video now to try coming up with a way to state each requirement in a way that meets the simple guidelines. There will be many options and there's no single answer, but this activity will give you some practice. We don't always know what our customers want, and a common mistake is for people within the organization to assume or to think they know. Rian, did you know that 80% of organizations think that they give superior customer service?
I'm not surprised.
Only 8% of their customers agree. The point is that it doesn't matter if we think we're fast enough or good enough. It really only matters that our customers do. And that's why their input is so incredibly valuable.
So the question is, what customer feedback do you need for your project? Do you need to understand all requirements? Or is your project focused on a specific issue already? There are many different methods for gathering customer feedback, and in this section, we will cover some of the most helpful.
If we are focused on internal customers, the best methods are to talk with them, actively seek their feedback, observe them using your output. It's most important to truly understand how the quality and timeliness of your output, or their input, affects their ability to deliver their output. However, it's a bit different gathering feedback from external customers. And one of the most common mistakes is assuming that we know requirements without validating those with the process customers.
Customer feedback is information coming directly from your customer about their satisfaction or dissatisfaction with your product or service. These comments are an important resource for figuring out how happy your customers are and how the business could improve its growth. Gathering this feedback can come from customer interactions, online forms, social media, email, review sites, phone calls, or surveys. Regardless, this feedback should be seen as a gift on how to improve your business.
In this section, we'll be talking about the importance of customer feedback. In Six Sigma circles, this is called voice of the customer, and the different methods to collect customer feedback that you'll need to succeed. Data shows that about 4% of customers actually give negative feedback. This means that just because you're not hearing complaints doesn't necessarily mean that your customers are happy. Getting any sort of feedback from a customer is a gift. Feedback is an opinion of what your process is doing right and what you can do to improve. If you want your customers to stay and grow with you, this is a critical information to have. Improving the customer experience rates higher than anything else when customers are asked what can be improved. You can have an amazing product and a great marketing team, but if the customer of the process isn't treated well and has a bad experience, guess what? They're not coming back. If you're serving an internal customer, you're making it harder for them to serve the end customer, who will ultimately go elsewhere.
Customer feedback is gradually becoming the cornerstone of improvement and growth initiatives. Several theories of consumer psychology point to the fact that even a simple satisfaction survey appeals to your customer's desire to be cared for, reinforcing the positive feelings they might already have about you and your product, and making them more likely to stay with you. The very process of asking questions or seeking opinions induces people to form judgments that otherwise wouldn't occur to them. They might not consciously realize that they love a feature unless you seek feedback on it. Customer feedback has become one of the primary drivers of long-term growth. Most organizations today jump at every opportunity to talk to the customer or learn about them. Businesses are spending millions of dollars on setting up feedback channels, emails, reviews, surveys, website analytics, etc.
The pertinent question now is, how do you utilize these channels to actually learn from the feedback? Before you establish the viability of a channel, it's crucial to develop a clear picture of why you're collecting the feedback. Are you seeking first-hand advice on product improvement? Are you building a new feature for which you're seeking the user's input? Have you been receiving a lot of complaints? Once you have the end goal clear, proceed to the tactical part. How do you collect feedback?
There's no one-size-fits-all tactic to gain information from your users. Different situations require different methods of collecting customer feedback. For example, a survey form sent to an already disgruntled user will only make matters worse. A phone call would be better in this situation. Let's talk through a few methods of collecting customer feedback.
Process observation. It's about going to the process, finding out what's happening on the ground. The purpose is to observe the process in action, getting people talking to you about standards, systems, and what's important to them. It's an opportunity to learn from what's working well and not so well. What creates frustration and disappointment? Focus on how customers are using the product or the service. What problems do they have? Is the process clear? Is it organized? Is it efficient? Observing customer behavior can provide much different information than a survey, for example. How people answer a question might be very different than their actions. We had a customer in the hospitality industry, and they wanted to provide a fruit basket for their premium guests. They had sent out a survey to ask customers to provide their fruit preferences. Right before they were about to create thousands of these baskets, we suggested that they create a plan to observe their customers' preferences instead. For a couple of weeks, they had baskets of fruit in key locations, and they observed the guests picking through the basket to grab their pick. The results of the observation were very different than the survey data. While people might love fresh pineapple, it's not exactly the kind of fruit that you put in your backpack and take up to your hotel room for a snack.
Our grocery store clients observe the walking path of their customers. Where are people wandering? Where are they backtracking? What items are too hard to find? Creating a map of the walking paths helps the store to understand the needs of the customer in a way that other methods would not provide. Identifying your process output and then watching the consumer or customer use or experience that output is a really powerful tool and should be used if possible to gather customer insights. You know what would be fun? If people could watch their customers try to get their new purchases out of its packaging, like batteries.
Oh yeah.
Or even scissors. Are they mocking me? The only thing that comes in an easy-to-open package are light bulbs. Flimsy cardboard, open on both ends. Anyway, don't get me started.
A focus group is a small gathering of people, like 6 to 8 people, in an interactive setting, generally a room or an online video conference, where they discuss a specific subject under the guidance of a facilitator. It takes place in a neutral location, as opposed to a company's own offices, for example, so customers can feel comfortable saying what they really think about the products or services discussed. It's a great way to hear firsthand feedback from actual users or potential customers. Those who know how to run a focus group We'll build enough flexibility into the process to be able to make changes on the fly or dive deeper into particular topics that may come up during the conversation.
A focus group is a method to ask people about their perceptions, opinions, beliefs, and attitudes towards a product, service, concept, or idea. Questions are asked in an informal group setting where participants are free to talk with other group members. As a rule of thumb, if you want to have a conversation with your customers that will help provide direction, pursue a focus group. If, however, you have well-defined questions with specific answers as options and need to reach a large group or multiple groups of customers, a survey may be better suited for your needs. If you have a website, live chat is one of the most important and valuable and popular ways of getting feedback from your customers. It is simple and easily accessible. If your customer needs a fast way of response from your team, the easiest way for him or her to communicate with it without any overcomplications is by using your live chat. Using live chat, you can learn what are the most common problems your clients have with the process. If you have a web presence or if you provide a product or service through a website, a live chat is a great method to gather live customer feedback.
Probably the most popular channel for finding out about customer feedback is social media. Use your social media channels to find out what people think about your company, product, or service. It's important to engage in the discussions with people who talk about your product or your service. Thanks to that, your customers know that you care about them and that you value their opinion. Social listening is a process of monitoring online conversations about your product or service. There are whole departments for businesses that take care of social listening, making sure customers' expectations are met. Be on top of customer insights. Make sure to dampen any situations that could hurt your brand. Express gratitude for those who are promoting and saying great things about you. If we don't listen to what our audience wants, we won't be able to connect with them. We won't be able to help or influence them. This rings true in our personal lives as well, as in how we approach our audience on social and beyond. All too often we're guessing, not listening. We're making tactical moves, not strategic ones. So who is your audience? How do they feel about not just your organization, but topics related to what you do? Which topics and trends are they passionate enough to discuss online? What do they really want, and how can you connect with them more effectively? If these are questions you've asked before, then social listening is for you. If you have a dedicated team member who can focus on social listening, this is a really useful method.
One of the most common ways of collecting customer feedback is a survey form. The one thing you have to always keep in mind here is to not get carried away and ask too many questions. The more questions your survey has, the less time your respondents spend, on an average, answering each. In other words, the more questions you ask your respondents, the more likely they will speed through it, and the quality and reliability of your data will suffer. The longer the survey, the less time will the respondents spend on each question. The takeaway is to make the survey as short as possible. There is no ideal length for a survey. A few experts do say that anything between 5 and 10 questions is a decent number. To keep your questions short, a good rule of thumb to keep in mind is only ask questions that fulfill your end goal. Ensure that every question serves a clear purpose. If you do not intend to use the information, do not ask the question. The aim is to collect customer feedback and not to have them write an essay. For example, if you are surveying a customer who has just exited your paid plan, there is no point asking them if the onboarding was easy. Your only aim should be to understand why they are leaving and what you can do to prevent that in the future. It is also important to start with open-ended questions. Let your customers surprise you. Multiple choice questions will give you answers based on your own assumptions. If you really want to know what the customer is thinking, give them an open-ended question.
So when should we use form-based surveys to collect customer feedback? The best place to use this is when we want detailed inputs and have specific questions to ask. This should only be sent to an engaged user who you're sure would like to take the time to provide feedback to you. Most of us are on our phones a lot. Make it super easy for customers to leave you feedback through a text. 90% of texts are opened within 3 minutes, so you know it won't take long before the responses come back. Setting up an automatic text to say thank you and politely ask for feedback. Customers are constantly thinking of ways that your product can work better for them. Maybe parts of your app don't have what they're looking for. Maybe the design could look a little better, or maybe they found something that's broken. More often than not, they will not reach out to you on your support address. That happens only when the problem is really big. If you have an app, a great idea is to offer a survey while your customer is using your app. The survey can be prompted the moment a user has finished interacting with a particular feature in the app. Since the user is already in the process of using the feature, it's very likely that their feedback will be very precise and to the point and not ambiguous. Remember, your users are in the app for a specific reason. It's not a great idea to throw a long survey at them. Keep it to 2 or 3 questions that are relevant to the page that's being displayed on. When you want a quick feedback from someone who has performed a certain action, a short in-app survey is a great option. Timing is critical though. You have to trigger the survey at the very moment a transaction ends, and the question should be specific to what the user is using or has just used and not about the product in general.
Next up is a social media group. Creating a group or a forum for your customers may be a great way of receiving feedback. A social media group can serve as a way to share experiences. Also, it can be useful in solving common problems. But more than anything, you can stay up to date with customers' expectations and know what they need. An online community can give your customers the sense of belonging to a group of people who want to make their work and life better and more productive. Create a group to reward your customers and make them feel special. For example, a group exclusively for people who have purchased your product or use your service. Groups are also great places to keep up with current events in your industry. The group can provide value for the customer. A group lets you, your best customer or advocates connect with each other. If you have an internal customer or diverse team of people working from different locations, create a group to keep in touch with your internal customers, stakeholders, and to promote a strong company culture of continuous improvement.
Most people check their email on their phones 3 times a day.
At least.
This can be very effective for sending a quick autoresponder email with a one-click feedback. Consumers are happy to give feedback emails and just need a little reminder to do so. Transactional emails are the ones that you receive right after signing up for a new service or upgrading to a new plan and so on. Basically, these are emails triggered by a certain interaction between the user and your app. Often, transactional emails are treated as a necessary notice, and companies don't put much effort into creating a dialogue with the customer. These emails often lack the aesthetic appeal of the website, and they tend to deliver an inconsistent customer experience, and that's a shame. That said, transactional emails can be a great tool to develop a dialogue with customers. Asking the right feedback question in these emails will certainly get good responses. In the example on the left, you'll see that the Viking does a great job at this by asking users to rate their delivery just after they've had a delivered product. In situations when you don't have a question to ask, it's a good idea to give your users a very easy way of getting in touch with you. A company called Buffer does this very well. You can see on the example on the right. So when should we use transactional emails to collect customer feedback? When a user does something significant, like signs up, upgrades to, or exits a plan, and so on. You can send them a quick one-liner question or a short multiple-choice question. The key is to gain an insight at the right time without burdening them with too many questions. Staying in touch with them and helping to solve current problems gives you the insight into what's the biggest issue and what needs to be improved.
As crazy as it might seem, an old-fashioned phone call can do wonders. Side note, I talked to my son the other day and said, "Why didn't you answer the phone when I called you?" And he said, "Oh, because I don't use my phone for that." They all use Messenger and whatever. But using an actual phone number has a very personable feel to it. If there's a negative complaint and you have the ability to call as a follow-up, most situations can be resolved easily, and the customer will feel satisfied and taken care of, as long as there is no robot voice at the beginning of your message. If you truly want to understand someone, you will have to talk to them. Surveys and other forms of feedback may give you tons of data, but they don't reliably tell you what a person truly feels about your product. This is when you need to reach out to your customers through the phone. It is a personalized and proactive method that generates the best responses. Hearing a person's voice and tone is the best way to sense what they actually think about your product. A call will help you tell what gets them excited and what really makes their life easier. The key here is that the person calling the user should genuinely want to understand their problem, with an effort to creating solutions. In other words, when collecting customer feedback, we're not doing it because we have to. We do it because we care. It's not a sales call.
So when do we use phone calls to collect customer feedback? Scheduling calls with your customers, talking to them, and making sense of the feedback, which is not as structured as entries in a form, it's a lot of hard work. The key here is to focus on those who can give you the best feedback to improve your product or your service. It makes sense to do phone calls with those customers who have deep knowledge about the area that you operate in, those who can give you actionable feedback. This is not a good avenue when you want to reach out to a lot of people at the same time.
A Net Promoter Score survey is the simplest question you can ask your customer. How likely are you to recommend us to a friend or a colleague? It is basically a method to measure your customer's sentiment about your product.
People who rate you a 0 through 6 are known as detractors. Those who rate you a 7 or 8 are known as passives, and those who give you a 9 or a 10 are known as promoters. The Net Promoter Score, or NPS, is the percent of promoters minus the percent of detractors. Take a look at your workbook example. Let's say there are 100 respondents. 10 responses were in the range of 0 to 6. Those are the detractors. 40 were in the range of 7 to 8, the passives. And 50 were in the range of 9 to 10. Those are our promoters. So the NPS is 50 divided by 100 times 100 minus 10 divided by 100 times 100. That gives us 40. The worst score you can get is minus 100, and the best score you can get is 100.
Apple uses NPS surveys to find detractors and improve their retail store experiences. Whether a customer made a purchase or scheduled an appointment to try on an Apple Watch, they email a survey to rate the in-store experience. Remember, any score above 0 is good. Anything above plus 50 is excellent, and over 70 plus is considered world-class. The greatest advantage of NPS is its simplicity and ease of use. It can be set up in minutes and is easily understood by everyone in the organization. It also makes it very easy to compare yourself with the industry standards. When should we use NPS to collect customer feedback? When you want to understand the general sentiment of your users about a transaction. You can use NPS for any of the touch points that the customer might have with the team, sales, customer support, etc. For example, it is a good practice to send an NPS survey after a support request is resolved.
The last method that we'll cover here is the suggestion board. Suggestion boards take collecting feedback up a level. They allow customers to collaborate on ideas with not just the company, but also with other customers. These boards allow users to create feedback posts, which can be upvoted or commented by other users. Top posts that have been upvoted or highly commented can help you discover what the majority of your users need. The best thing about suggestion boards is that ideas that had been suggested by some customers became popular ideas among others who hadn't thought of the benefits that those ideas could bring. Lego Ideas is one of the best examples of how customer insight can be used for product development. Lego enthusiasts can easily submit their own designs on this little mini site. The projects gathering more than 10,000 votes from the community go through a Lego review, and they're selected to become new sets if the review is favorable. Results, of course, take some time to develop, and feedback is not to be accumulated immediately. You'll have to wait until there's enough feedback so you can determine which ones are popular to your customers as a whole. So when should we use suggestion boards to collect customer feedback? Well, when you're looking for new ideas from your customers, you should start with inviting customers who know your product or your service really well. They'll be in a better position to suggest improvements or new features. After you have a few ideas on the board, you can start inviting more users. They can upvote or comment on others' ideas, even if they don't have one themselves. Just as any time we're collecting customer data, once you've collected the feedback, you want to pay attention to the next step is to analyze the data and take actual steps to make things better for all stakeholders.
So we've covered a lot of options at a high level. In this table, we give you a summary of the methods that we discussed and a little more guidance on when to use them. Most often, teams will use some combination of methods to gather feedback from their customers. And then the next step is to synthesize and prioritize that raw feedback.
In summary, when you listen to people, you'll be able to deliver the best results and satisfy customers' needs. Often, your loyal customers would have developed an expertise of your product features. Some of our users understand the product or service as much as the internal experts do. Process improvement team meetings can only take you so far. The real insight comes from the ones who use your output regularly. No matter how hard you try to empathize with them and put yourself in their shoes, your process customers will always have some ideas that you didn't think of. So before we start brainstorming solutions, let's follow the advice that our customers give us. Not only will our customers appreciate our willingness to listen, but we'll set ourselves apart from competitors as a business that genuinely cares. The bottom line is that customer feedback is extremely important for improving and growing businesses. Making processes to gather reviews and feedback from as many places as you can is the only way to truly understand your customers' requirements.
So let's pull our heads out of the conceptual and talk through some simple but effective CI tools that can be used to specify and prioritize requirements. We'll cover the Kano analysis, the basic tree diagram, the VOC translation matrix, and the very flexible affinity diagram.
If you ask your customers which features or services do you want us to do well, of course they'll say all of them. We want everything, which is kind of true, but it's a little more sophisticated than we might realize. For customers, there are those things that are the gotta-haves, the nice-to-haves, and then the we didn't even know we needed that kind of features. That's what the Kano analysis is about. It helps us to prioritize our customer requirements from the customer perspective so that we can gain a greater understanding of where we should focus our efforts.
Let's say that you are traveling. You check into the hotel and you open the door to find that the bed is not made. There are some nice quality products in the bathroom and you were offered a free cocktail to be delivered to your room as soon as you arrived. The Kano analysis categorizes customer requirements on two different axes. The horizontal axis, from left to right, shows how well we perform on that feature or characteristic. The far left side means that we do it poorly or not at all. The far right means that we're great at it. The vertical axis represents customer satisfaction, low to high. And the diagram shows our performance and the impact it has on customer satisfaction. So when we open a door to our hotel room, we fully expect to have a clean made bed. Even if this is done really well, customer satisfaction will only go so high. People don't write raving results about a hotel because the bed was clean when they arrived. That is a basic requirement, also called a dissatisfier. The name means that you cannot satisfy a customer by performing on this, but you can certainly dissatisfy them if done poorly.
The next thing that we noticed was the quality of the products in the bathroom. This falls in the more the better category. The better we perform, the happier the customer. So as we increase the quality of the products, or the quality of the towels, or the value of the rewards that I get for staying, those are all satisfiers or variable requirements. As we increase our performance, customer sat increases as well. The final example is the complimentary cocktail that we received upon check-in. We didn't even know that we wanted a drink until they offered us one. So we wouldn't have been unhappy if we didn't get one, but we were delighted when we were served. These are called delighters or future requirements, things that the customer doesn't know yet that they want or that they need.
A Kano analysis is not something you can do once every 10 years. Customer requirements and expectations change quickly. So even if your organization has gone through this analysis recently, your team may want to repeat it. For one thing, features or capabilities that were originally delighters have a tendency to slip into dissatisfier requirements. It wasn't too many years ago that having Wi-Fi access was a true luxury. Now it's expected to be available for free everywhere we go.
In your workbook, you'll find your 1-point lesson for the Kano analysis. One of the most valuable takeaways from this tool is to prioritize the requirements. For teams, typically it's the most fun to work on the new stuff, on new technology or new products. And many times we do this while we're failing to deliver the basic needs. It's the equivalent of getting that nice cocktail when you enter your dirty hotel room, and that's no good. As a priority, we have to focus on being great at the basics, doing the best we can within our constraints for the satisfiers, and then we can do the fun work of figuring out our customers' future needs.
Here's a simple structure to help us to drill down from general to specific. We can use this tool in many ways, but in this chapter we are focused on taking a general customer requirement and drilling down into specific and measurable requirements. Let's say that we're going on a flight. And as the passengers, we say that we want it to be a good flight. If we break that down, we'd have to assess what we mean by that. Well, we'd like the seat to be comfortable. We want good food. We'd like to have good service. We're getting more granular, but still not to the point of measurable. So let's get into a little bit more detail. What do we mean by comfortable seats? We'd like the seat to have at least 6 inches of legroom and the seat to recline at least 6 inches. And by good food, we mean that we'd like healthy food with multiple options. And if we think about good service, there's our flight going off. We consider it good if the flight attendant responds to the call button within 2 minutes, and if they say hello when we enter the plane.
This is the tree diagram. And in this example, the good flight at the top is the need. The comfortable seat, good food, and good service are the drivers. And the details at the bottom are the specific requirements. In Six Sigma terms, the customer requirements are often referred to as CTQs, which stands for critical to quality. This last level should get us to specific, measurable requirements.
And here's the OPL for the tree diagram, a useful and simple structure that can be used anytime we need to drill down from general to specific.
This next tool is based on the reality that our customers don't write our requirements for us, but they give us the information we need to develop their feedback into a specific and measurable requirement. CTQs, or critical to quality, are key quantifiable requirements of a service or product which are critical to meet customer expectations, and they're defined by customer expectations. It's what the customer expects of our product or service. Their expectations and comments, which are gathered from various voice of the customer methods, must be translated into specific requirements.
We can take customer quotes or verbatim such as this. You guys take forever to answer a simple question. And with that, we need to research examples and information about our actual performance. We discover that customers start getting annoyed anytime we take longer than 5 hours to respond to emails received through our website. We can then translate that into a requirement that we respond to all website email questions in less than or equal to 4 hours.
We might get a customer comment like this: "Go here if you want the worst Bloody Mary ever." And after we do some research, we find that the complaint was about the Bloody Mary being too spicy for their taste. The requirement? We must offer at least 3 options for level of spiciness. Not all customers want the same thing, and most good processes are able to flex to various needs.
I was just thinking about feedback that I gave our hotel restaurant this morning. I asked the waiter, "Can I get 2 boiled eggs? One runny and the other so overcooked that it's like rubber? Then I want cold bacon, burnt toast, and a pot of lukewarm weak coffee." The confused waiter said, "That's a very complicated order, sir. It might be a bit difficult." I said, "Oh, really? It wasn't difficult yesterday." I wonder how he translated my helpful feedback.
This tool is called the VOC, or Voice of the Customer Translation Matrix. It's a simple table that the team can use to organize customer comments and take action to translate those comments into requirements.
The next concept that we'll cover helps us to take a lot of ideas or options and put them into an organized form. If the team gets together and brainstorms answers to the question, what is causing our quality and timeliness issues in the department? We might get a random list of ideas. With an affinity diagram, once the ideas are generated, 2 or 3 team members will silently put those ideas into groupings, kind of letting the data reveal the patterns.
In our example here, we find that the ideas generated fit into 5 different categories. The team labels those categories and groups the ideas accordingly. This is typically done as a silent brainstorming session. That means that the team individually and silently comes up with as many ideas as they can. When they're done generating ideas, they display their ideas and continue with the grouping.
The affinity diagram gathers large amounts of language data, ideas, opinions, issues, and organizes them into groupings based on their natural relationships. This team is a good way to get people to work on a creative level to address difficult issues. It may be used in situations that are unknown or unexplored by a team, or in circumstances that seem confusing or disorganized, such as when people with diverse experiences form a new team, or when members have incomplete knowledge of the area of analysis. For example, a process owner who is identifying customers and their needs might compile a very large list of unsorted data. In such a case, creating an affinity diagram might be helpful for organizing the data into groups. As a rule of thumb, if less than 15 items of information have been identified, you can skip the affinity process. It's really best for working with large amounts of information.
At the beginning of this chapter, we reviewed the different types of requirements. Customer requirements, gathered through VOC methods just covered. Business requirements, based on the direction from the sponsor, tell us what is important to the organization. And input requirements. In order for this process to deliver on customer and business requirements, what standards must the inputs meet? Not all requirements will be understood at a specific and measurable level of detail. As a process improvement or DMAIC project, the team will now work to identify which requirements will be the focus of this project. They will not focus on improving results for every single requirement. Rather, they'll focus on those most closely related to the business case and within a manageable scope for the team.
The SIPOC one-point lesson has an example of a completed SIPOC. At this point in the project, the team is ready to narrow the focus and determine which requirement or requirements are the focus of their project. In the Excel file of Greenbelt Define Phase templates, you will find this template along with an example of a completed form.
That brings us to the project charter. With the SIPOC completed and a solid understanding of the requirements, the team has the information needed to draft the initial charter. The completion of the project charter is a major milestone for an improvement team. It's maybe the most important as it sets the trajectory for the remainder of the project. There are multiple pieces of information that the team must agree upon and compile, using the project information shared with them by their sponsor. The charter is a collaborative effort by the team, maintained by the project leader, and is an ongoing key communication tool for the team.
You'll find the project charter in your file of Greenbelt templates. The charter is completed by the team initially in the define phase of DMAIC and will be continually updated as the team progresses and as the project evolves. And now, let's walk through each of the charter components. At the top of the charter is the business case. This is drafted by the sponsor and shared with the team during the project kickoff. The next section on the charter is the project timeline. The planned closure date should have been identified by the sponsor during the project kickoff, but not always. The planned dates do not change once entered, and the team will track the actual dates as the phases are completed. If the actual date is on or before the planned date, the cell will turn green. Otherwise, it'll be red. This is a helpful tool to continue to improve our planning and execution skills. Without tracking our initial planned dates, it's way too easy to lose track and the project goes on way past the original estimations.
The team member names should align with the team selection form to identify the team members for this project. The section titled Expected KPIs to Improve is another area that should align with the info shared by the sponsor during the project kickoff. When we select a specific problem and goal for this project, we'll want to make sure that it either aligns with the original sponsor expectations, or we need to have a conversation and realign the expectations with the sponsor.
So before we get back into the form, let's talk about problem and goal statements. These are paired statements that work together. The problem statement describes the issue, the severity, and gives specifics. The goal describes the desired or expected outcome that the team expects to achieve regarding that problem. For example, if the problem is that cycle time is slow, the goal might be to make cycle time faster. Or if quality is poor, the goal is for quality to improve. Expenses are high. The goal is to lower expenses. But it's not quite that simple. We need to add some more meat on the bones to make it meaningful. It's important, though, to keep the same subject in both.
You'll notice a placeholder in the goal statement in this example. During the define phase of the project, it's unlikely that the team will have a deep enough understanding to predict the specific impact. So we leave a placeholder here that they'll fill in as they learn more about the opportunities. The elements on the charter should all tie together. The business case is the broad description of the problem or opportunity. If provided, the expected KPIs to be impacted should be aligned with the business case and should provide a bit more detail. And the problem and goal should be aligned to the business case and KPIs and provide the most specific description of the problem that the project will focus on and the expected result.
The problem statement is a succinct and specific description of the problem that the team is expected to solve. It's not always a problem. Sometimes it can be an opportunity, like serving a new type of customer or providing a feature that we haven't done well before. It should include a description of an issue, gap, or opportunity, an indication of the severity of the pain or the size of the opportunity, and specifics as available. it should not include the cause, blame or accountability, or a solution. We're not quite there yet.
The detail in your problem and goal statements will evolve throughout your project. They typically start off general and get more and more narrow in focus and more specific. For example, the team might start out with the problem that coffee is not hot enough. And as they investigate and learn about the process, they update the problem statement to include the specific temperature. And then further, they add more detail. Coffee is served to customers at less than 150 degrees, approximately 25% in the first 6 months of the year. Just like the problem statements, the goal statements will follow the evolution. And remember, an undefined problem has an infinite number of solutions.
Well said, Claire. Let's use our customer call center as an example for scope, which is the next section of our charter. In your workbook, you'll see our call center SIPOC with an example, problem, and goal. The problem is customer survey scores for understanding the resolution with the lowest of all categories with an average score of 2 out of 10. And the goal is increase the customer survey scores for understanding the resolution to 8 or higher by the project end date. There are 2 different ways we can state our scope. The first is by identifying the steps to be included in our analysis. This means that we will dive into deeper detail on these steps to uncover the root causes of the problem. And if we find something, we'll likely make changes there. So identifying the from or to steps in the process is one way. The other is to identify specific elements within the process. For example, for this project, we might decide to narrow our scope to only include the last 2 steps in the process, from research to explanation to customer. And we may further indicate what's in scope and out of scope within those steps. We might decide to include current research, procedures, assignments, and escalations, but we will not include or will consider off-limits hiring and changes to the current phone system.
Now back to our form. The top boxes in the scope section are there for us to capture the from and the to steps in the process. And the lower boxes are to capture the specific elements that are in scope and out of scope. In setting up our project, we make assumptions, and constraints always limit us. This is very common even in everyday life. We must understand and control these factors in order to complete your project successfully. These are defined and identified when the project starts, and they're refined and reanalyzed throughout the project. An assumption is what you believe is true. These are events or circumstances that are expected during your project. You make assumptions based on your experience and available information. Assumptions may not end up being true. Sometimes they can be false and it may affect your project. This adds risk to the project. For example, you assumed that you could get equipment whenever you needed it. However, you couldn't when the time came. Now you're in a difficult situation. Assumptions are an essential factor to be aligned with the sponsor to minimize the risks to the successful completion of the project.
Constraints are limitations imposed on a project. For example, scope, schedule, budget, and resources are the main categories of constraints. They are defined at the beginning of your project, and you have to work within their boundaries. In the project charter is a section to capture assumptions and constraints. As with the other elements of the charter, these will evolve and develop over the life cycle of the project. Your workbook has some examples of assumptions and constraints listed for your reference.
You'll notice that we include A3 in the title of our project charter form. We include it here because an A3 is a traditional element in Lean that summarizes a lot of critical information on one page. A3 refers to a European paper size that's roughly equivalent to an American 11-inch by 17-inch tabloid-sized paper. The A3 format was created by Toyota and is used for 3 different types of reports: proposals, project status, and problem solving. Over time, the term A3 has come to mean a one-page document, and many organizations use an A3 for their project charter. In the Excel file of Greenbelt Defined Phase templates, you'll find this template along with an example of a completed form.
Okay, let's do a quick activity. Without pausing the video, change something about yourself. We'll give you a couple of seconds to think of something while we do the same thing.
Okay, so we're doing this too?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
What are you going to change?
Take off my watch.
How
about you?
I'm going to take these off.
Okay.
Okay, eyes are adjusting. Now, we put you on the spot, but chances are pretty good that you took something off, like I did my glasses, Claire did her watch, a ring, maybe you put your pen down. Most people perceive change as a loss. It's pretty rare to find people that perceive that change will actually add or improve things. To properly care for our stakeholders, we need to understand who they are and we need to understand their perspectives. Thinking this through early in the project is the only way to have a successful implementation in the end.
If we studied a group of people to understand human height, we'd see a pattern like this. If we lined them up from shortest to tallest, we'd see this shape. Very few on the extremes and the majority clustered around the center. We'll learn more about this shape in the measure phase of DMAIC. The interesting thing is that if we're studying a group of people and their perspectives on change, we would expect to see the same pattern. We would expect about 15% of the people to have a negative perspective on change, about 70% to be neutral, and the remaining 15% or so totally in favor of change. And don't get me wrong, we're not saying that short people hate change. The point is that anytime we're working to improve something, it means that we intend to make some changes. All improvement requires change, but as the people on the left side of this picture will tell you, not all change is an improvement. This matters because when you're starting a project, you need to be highly in tune with those people who you will rely on to make the improvement a reality. When you make changes, it will require some people to do some things differently, and they know this, and they've probably seen it done poorly before. So from the very beginning, a process improvement team must first identify who are our stakeholders and what are their perspectives on changing the process.
A simple target style diagram can be used for the team to initially identify who the stakeholders are for this project. The short project name goes in the center of the target. The ring closest to the center is where we capture those stakeholders or stakeholder groups who are closest to the project. These are the decision makers, the ones who can make or break the project. These are usually leaders in the organization or internal customers. To clarify a couple common mistakes, end customers are never considered stakeholders. Customers are much bigger than a stakeholder. The next layout represents stakeholders who are not necessarily decision makers. They won't make or break the project, but they can have an influence on the project direction. These are usually subject matter experts or SMEs, or people who are heavily involved with the process and will certainly influence whether the project is successful or not. The last level identifies those stakeholders who may not have input into the decisions that the team makes, and they are not big influencers. However, they will likely be affected by the change or improvement in the process. These are people who may have to do something differently in the new process.
When the teams identified the stakeholders and placed them in the appropriate ring on the diagram, the next step is to assess the current perspective of each with regard to the project. This is not a scientific assessment, and it's also not an emotional activity, but it's a necessary early step to determine how to best work with the stakeholder. The team will discuss each stakeholder or stakeholder group. And using their current knowledge, they'll identify the stakeholder as either supportive, neutral, or negative. The team won't always know the current perspective of every stakeholder, and when they don't, it's an action item for someone to find out.
Supportive means that they support the decision to prioritize this project and that they will actively support the team with tasks, resources, or collaboration. Negative means that they are actively against the work of the project team or that they have demonstrated that they do not intend to cooperate with the project. A neutral perspective indicates that they are neither negative nor particularly supportive. These are the "I'll believe it when I see it" or "this wasn't my idea" people.
Our premise is always that if the stakeholder currently has a negative perspective, then they have a good reason for that. Most people who are not in support of a change have a fear of us breaking something important along the way, or making changes without enough information from people who work inside the process every day and who truly know how it works. They've likely been through change before, where if they were included in the discussions, they would have been able to provide some key info to prevent failures. So once the team has identified the current view, the next step is to identify the desired view. Now, every stakeholder doesn't have to be a cheerleader for the project. We don't need 100% of our stakeholders to be supporters. Sometimes neutral is fine. If we have a critical stakeholder who's currently negative, and the team agrees that we need them to be supportive, then the team has some work to do. And similarly, if we have a stakeholder exactly where we need them to be, then the team has to determine how to keep them there and not lose support.
So pulling these concepts together, the team will create something that looks like this. Stakeholders identified on stickies. And where the team had knowledge, they have used a minus, a zero, and a plus signs to indicate the current and desired perspectives. For example, looking in the decision maker's ring, we can now see that all of the critical stakeholders are currently neutral, but the team agrees that they need to be supportive. Looking at the outer ring, those affected by the project, we see two stakeholders who are currently supportive, and the team would like to keep them there. When identifying stakeholders, typically the further out you go in the diagram, you are more likely to be dealing with groups rather than individuals. But when can you group stakeholders together? The whole objective of this activity is for us to ultimately create a plan to communicate with and engage our stakeholders. So if we have a group of 10, let's say customer care reps, and they all reasonably share the same perspective, then we can group them together as a stakeholder group, just like they did in this example. However, if we have multiple perspectives within that group, then we'll want to separate them out.
With the raw work done, the next step is to transfer the whiteboard data to the stakeholder plan template. This is a two-part template. Page 1 is a summary, a list of all the project stakeholders, and then page 2 is where we capture specific messages for each. We'll create a compelling case using data, examples, and context that's meaningful for the stakeholder. In your workbook, you'll see a full picture of this template. Let's walk through the elements now.
On page 1, you'll notice light green fields. These fields have drop-down lists to easily make your selection. Light yellow fields indicate that it's a free-form field. The fields on this form are stakeholder name, relation to the project. The options are decision maker, influencer, or affected. Current view, that's negative, neutral, or supportive. And desired view.
Drawbacks and opportunities is a place to capture the team's summary of how this project may affect the stakeholder. What are the drawbacks if this project is not successfully completed? What are the opportunities if it is? This may take some research and some thought to understand the perspective of this stakeholder, but it's a critical step to ensure that your project has the best chances of success.
Strategy identifies the high-level plan for creating alignment with a stakeholder. The options follow the PAINT acronym, that is, persuade, appeal, for example, appeal to their ideals, values, visibility, ambition, etc. Involve, negotiate, for example, trade their time for something of value that you can offer, or tell. Tell means that we just tell the stakeholder how it's going to be. This is the least effective, but is sometimes the most appropriate. For example, if there's an urgent safety or legal issue, negotiating or appealing wouldn't be a very good approach.
And the last element is vehicle. We've identified a broad strategy, but the vehicle gets a little more specific. Options are formal updates, informal updates, share documentation, or involve in relevant team meetings. With this information populated by the team for all critical stakeholders, we can now move on to developing specific messages for each.
Before we move to part 2 of the template, we'd like to discuss the importance of creating intentional messages for each stakeholder group. Spending the time up front to engage your stakeholders is so much better, more efficient and more effective than waiting until the time when you're ready to implement your new solutions. Considering the experiences, the assumptions, the preferences, and the knowledge of your stakeholders will allow you to have a much higher quality of communication.
With the summary form completed, the team can continue to create the initial communication or message to each stakeholder. You can consolidate your messages as long as the stakeholders have the same point of view or perspective. This form provides the prompts to create a meaningful message targeted specifically to the stakeholder. The ability to get others in the organization to be enthusiastic about your project is a key to success, and our advice is to start building support early.
And your one-point lesson for the stakeholder plan walks through the high-level steps to complete the summary and detailed level of info. As you may have already wondered, your stakeholder management plan is a confidential team document and should not be shared outside of the team. And we have to be sensitive and diplomatic when using the information. For example, we don't just go up to someone and say, "Hey, our team has identified you as a major negative stakeholder, and we want to know how to get you to the positive. Can I buy you a drink?" It's really a helpful method when used properly, not like that. Like all other Lean Six Sigma tools, as the saying goes, a fool with a tool is still a fool.
Oh, good one. A storyboard is used to arrange or organize illustrations or images that are created to tell a story. Storyboards are used in the filmmaking industry, in theaters, and in creating comics. A storyboard provides a preview of the story being made before it's finalized and produced. This allows filmmakers or ad agencies to clearly communicate ideas and to save time and costs. When we prepare a storyboard, we're not aiming to include a description of every single activity or all the work that a team has accomplished so far. Rather, we're focused on walking through the milestones, the key findings, the discoveries, and decisions. Our audience will not necessarily understand the technical aspects of Lean Six Sigma or all the tools that we might use, so it's important to make our points clear.
With an improvement project, the storyboard depicts the progress and the improvements made by the team. Storyboards walk the audience in a clear and concise manner through the different tools used in various stages of the project. Depending on the preferences of your stakeholder and the organizational culture, a storyboard can be in handout or presentation form. It can be formal or informal and creative. The important thing is that it clearly communicates the milestones of the project. The storyboard should be ready to go at any time, meaning that it's always updated from very early on in the project. And at any time during the project, if the team is asked for an update, the storyboard is ready to go. When the project closes, the storyboard will be a valuable document for future teams to learn from the project.
Along with the Greenbelt certification course, you'll have access to download the DMAIC Project Storyboard PowerPoint template. This template will set you up so that you can create a professional, consistent, and meaningful communication tool for your project. This is the cover slide for the storyboard, which has spaces for you to enter the project name, the team or the person who prepared the storyboard, and the date updated. In your workbook, you'll see icons that you can select from your cover. In this example, we're showing the time icon, which indicates that this project is focused on improving timeliness. Your other options are productivity, quality, costs, and safety. Of course, if your project is focused on something less common, for example, legal or regulatory compliance, you can always use a different icon.
The slides in the PowerPoint deck will follow the DMAIC phases. Here we are covering the slides for the define phase. The first slide shows the project charter along with a placeholder for the team to document any highlights. This might be specific notes or challenges or lessons learned while creating the charter.
Next, the team will include their SIPOC. In this example, the team has circled the requirement that they're focused on to make sure it pops in the presentation. They'll also add highlights or specific areas of focus in the highlights section.
The stakeholder management plan is the next milestone that will be presented. Because the stakeholder plan is considered a confidential team document, the team will be sure not to include any information that may be considered sensitive or offensive.
The define phase will end with the checklist to accurately indicate which milestones the team has completed before moving to the measure phase.
The Tollgate meeting with a sponsor means that the team believes that they are ready to move to the measure phase, and they need to ensure that the sponsor has approved the defined milestones and that the team is aligned with organizational leadership before taking the project any further. The Tollgate meeting is a time for the team to update leadership about key current state findings as well as future state considerations. Conduct a status check to ensure that they haven't missed important considerations, and request changes, resources, or assistance with decisions.
And it's also a time for leaders to confirm that the team is considered relevant financial, regulatory, safety, customer, and business requirements and organizational strategies. It's a time for leaders to challenge the team's thinking to ensure that they've explored relevant options and to provide buy-in on the direction and the decisions of the team.
This is not just a basic status meeting. The Tollgate meeting is a time to share progress, updates, and key findings with the sponsor, to get their input or approval on decisions or direction, to remove roadblocks or obtain needed resources, and in the end to ensure alignment and get the green light to move to the next phase. The team can use a storyboard and will focus on the phase checklist and will include any supporting documentation to communicate clearly and efficiently to the sponsor.
To assist teams with the Tollgate meeting, we've created the Tollgate meeting form. This form includes a guide for preparation on the bottom left of the form. It includes a place to capture the meeting attendees and a basic Tollgate meeting agenda. There's a place to plan for the time as well. As with most agendas, the time is used as a guideline, and conversations may follow a different path. However, we use this tool to help provide structure and flow to the Tollgate meeting. When the Tollgate meeting has been conducted, the team will either have to go back and realign some portions of the define phase, or they'll have the green light to move on to the next phase, measure.
And here's your final template for the define phase. This checklist will help to guide you through the phase to ensure that you are not skipping critical milestones. If you decide to move forward when you still have some statuses at yellow or red, it's a great indication that you have some risk factors that will put the timeline or the quality of your project at risk. This checklist can easily be used as the basis of a Gantt chart, which allows you to add names and add dates to each of these phase milestones.
Also, to help guide you through the define phase, you've learned about and have access to great Excel templates for the project charter, a SIPOC, a stakeholder management plan, and the Tollgate meeting planner. And because becoming a competent Greenbelt means that you've learned a lot of methods and tools, we've provided easy one-page summaries of each Greenbelt tool or concept. Don't worry about memorizing. The important thing is that you remember that tools exist and that you know where to go for a refresher when you need one.
As you begin to take action towards the fulfillment of your goals and aspirations, you need to realize that not every action will be perfect. Not every action will produce the desired result. Not every action will work. Making mistakes, getting it almost right, and experimenting to see what happens are all part of the process of eventually getting it right.
As a Lean Six Sigma Greenbelt, you may need support when faced with challenging or unique scenarios, or when applying tools or methods that are not often used. If you should need support, you can contact us to schedule a private coaching session through our website. Just look for the Coaching with Cannsult link. We are your partners in continuous improvement and are a resource to help you quickly and effectively reach your goals.